Hello everyone, welcome back to Timeless Trial. This is Advocate Preeti Acharji, and today we will discuss the. So in today's video we'll be discussing the notes on module 2 of Law of Criminal Procedure, that is jurisdiction of criminal courts in inquiry and trial as per the SPPU syllabus for BLLB 10 SEM and LLB 6 SEM. As part of the video I'll be discussing the first four topic under the module, and on the second part I'll be discussing the rest too. So we'll first see the module content. So in this module we'll deal with inquiry proceeding, general principle of jurisdiction of criminal court, power of police, magistrate and courts, jurisdiction of court under section 197 to 209. Then we'll see initiation of inquiry proceeding from section 210 to 214. Then there is exception to general principle of moving criminal courts from section 215 to 222. Then complainant to magistrate section 223 to 226. Then inquiry proceeding before magistrate section 227 to 232. So now on the screen we can see the potential question from this module. Now coming to the first topic, that is general principle of jurisdiction of criminal court under BNSS. So in this question you can start with the synopsis from introduction, then about the general principle of jurisdiction of criminal courts, where you can state from section 197 to section 209 each listed, then importance of chapter 14, and then a conclusion. So to start with the introduction, you can write that how BNSS is considered as a comprehensive legislative reform in Indian criminal justice system, which replaced the old CRPC, and how it outlines the procedures for investigation, trial and sentencing, ensuring that fair justice is given to all the citizens, and also that it deals with the jurisdiction of criminal court and the power granted to police, magistrate and court to ensure an effective handling of criminal cases. So now we'll see general principle of jurisdiction of criminal court. So coming to the jurisdiction, it can be defined as how the authority of various courts are handled in criminal matters based on the nature of the offences plus the geographical area over which it occurred. So BNSS deals with such designated, like which court has the jurisdiction to try this specific matter, or which jurisdiction can be followed, like geographically which jurisdiction can be given to which court. Now chapter 14 deals with the jurisdiction of criminal courts under BNSS, which inquires and trials under the law, and that it lays down the legal provision that determine that which court has the authority to inquire into or try a criminal case based on factors such as place of the commission of the offence, means where the offence has been committed, or upon the nature of the offences, or if there is any circumstances under which it was committed. Then considering all these factors, the jurisdiction are being decided. So coming to the first section, that is section 197 of BNSS, which was previously section 177 of CRPC. This talks about ordinary place of inquiry and trial. Now suppose if an offence normally been investigated and tried by the court within whose local area the offence took place. That means suppose if the theft has been taken place in Jaipur, then the trial will be held in Jaipur court. So it is very simple. Where the offence has been committed, the local area to which, or the local court which has the jurisdiction over that area, will try the matter. Now then there is section 198, which talks about place of inquiry or trial when location is uncertain or spans multiple areas. Previously it was section 178 of CRPC, and now it is 198 under BNSS. So there are four factors given. Now suppose if there is an unclear that where exactly the offence has happened, or if it occurred partly in two or more local areas, like two or more local areas the offence has been committed, or if it is a continuing offence across multiple areas, or if it consists of several acts done in different areas, then in all these four cases the court with jurisdiction over any of these areas can try the matter. Now we'll see section 199 of BNSS, which was previously section 179 of CRPC, that talks about offence triable where act is done or consequences ensues. Now, if an act becomes an offence due to both the act and its result, then the case can be tried either where the act was done or where the consequences happened. Now, suppose poison is mixed in the food in Mumbai and that the person dies in Pune, then either Mumbai or Pune court can try the case. Then there is section 200 of BNSS that talks about offence by relation to another offence, which also comes under section 180 of CRPC. Now, this talks about that if an act is an offence because of its connection to another offence, then it may be tried where either act has been occurred. Now, suppose if a bribe is demanded in Bangalore and the same is paid in Hyderabad. Now, there are two offences. First of all, demand of bribe is also an offence, also, and further, paying of bribe is also an offence. So, there are two offences which are connected to each other. Then, either city court can conduct a trial, means where the first offence has occurred or else where the second offence has occurred. Either or court can try the matter in such cases. So here you have seen we have given examples also. So if you don't remember the crux of the section, then you can easily remember it from the examples. Now we'll see section 201, which was previously section 181 of CRPC, that talks about place of trial for certain specific offences. Now clause 1 of section 201 say that if there is a dacoity or plus dacoity with murder or gang membership or escaping custody, then these cases may be tried where the commission of the act has been done or where the accused is being found. Now suppose if dacoity is planned in Agra and committed in Mathura, then both the court can try it. Then there is clause 2 which says kidnapping or abduction. Now in such cases, this sort of cases can be tried where the person was kidnapped or abducted or concealed, conveyed or detained. Now suppose if a person is kidnapped in Bhopal and taken to Indore, then both the cities have the jurisdiction. Then there is clause 3, that is theft, extortion or robbery. Then in that case where offence occurred or where stolen property was found with offender or another person who knowingly received it, that court will have the jurisdiction. Suppose a chain snatcher commits robbery in Lucknow and is caught in Kanpur, then both court can try the matter. Then there is again clause 4 which talks about criminal misappropriation or breach of trust. Now in that case, these cases may be tried where offence happened or where property was held to be returned or accounted for. Now there also an example that suppose an agent collect money in Delhi and refuses to return it in Chandigarh, then either places can try those cases. Now clause 5 is prosecution of stolen property. Case may be tried where it occurred or where the stolen good were knowingly received or kept. So if stolen mobile phone is taken from Pune and sold in Nagpur, then both cities court can have the jurisdiction of over the matter. Then there is section 202 of BNSS, which was previously section 182 of CRPC. This section talks about cheating and electronic communication offences. Now in this we have clauses. The first clause says, suppose if cheating happens via email, messages, letters, then it may be tried where the message was sent or received. Now if it is involved delivery of property, now the trial can be where property was delivered or received. Now suppose a fraud email is sent from Surat and received in Ahmedabad, then both the courts can try it. Then there is clause 2 which talks about offences under section 81, that all includes bigamy. Now in that cases, these cases may be tried where offence occurred or where the offender last lived with the first spouse or where the first wife took permanent resident after the offences. Now that means that if suppose if a man remarries in Goa while still married and his first wife lives in Mumbai, then either court can hear the case. Now we'll go with section 203, which was previously section 183 of CRPC, that talks about offence committed during journey or walk. Now, if offence occurred during a journey or walk, it may be tried in any court through or into whose area the person or object passed during that journey. Now, suppose if a pickpocket steals on a train from Chennai to Kochi, any station the train passed has the jurisdiction there. Now, let's come to section 204 of BNSS, which was previously section 184 of CRPC, that talks about place of trials for offences triable together. Now, if one person can be tried for multiple connected offences or several persons can be tried together, then any competent court may try all such offences together. That means A and B suppose jointly makes a burglary or an assault in Delhi, then in that case they can be jointly tried in one Delhi court for both of the offences. Now, the power to shift trial to another session division under section 205 of BNSS, which was previously section 185 of CRPC. This says that the state government can direct the certain cases from any district may be tried in another session division unless overruled by a direction from High Court or Supreme Court. Now, to ensure neutrality, the state has the power to transfer a sensitive political trial from district A to district B sessions court, but they also have to ensure that such should not be overruled by a direction from High Court or Supreme Court. Then there is section 206 that talks about High Court to decide which court should try an offence, which was previously also known as section 186 of CRPC. Now, suppose if there are multiple courts that take up the same offences, and if under same High Court the offence is going on, then High Court will decide which court will have jurisdiction, and if under different High Courts, then the High Court where proceeding first began will proceed. Now, all other proceeding must stop once a decision is made. This means the same online scam FIR is registered in Delhi and Bangalore, then High Court can pick one court for trial. Now, there is section 207, which talks about power of magistrate to act an offence committed outside his jurisdiction, which was previously section 187 of CRPC. Now, the clause 1 says that if a first class magistrate believes that a person in his area committed an offence outside his area, even outside India, but it's triable in India, then he may investigate it as if done locally. He may send the person to appropriate court or take bond if the offence isn't very serious. And then suppose if a scam is committed in Goa but the accused is arrested in Mumbai, then a Mumbai magistrate can inquire and transfer the matter. Then there is clause 2, which says that if there are multiple magistrates with jurisdiction and the right one isn't clear, the matter should be referred to the High Court. Now, suppose an NRI commits an offence affecting people in multiple Indian cities, High Court chooses just the court for trial. Then there are offences committed outside India, that is under section 208, which was previously section 188 of CRPC, which says that suppose if a crime is committed outside India by an Indian citizen or by an Indian ship or aircraft, then it may be tried in India where the accused is found or where the offence is registered. But so here there was a change that has been done, that prior sanction of the central government is required whenever to take such a decision. So we will also see an example to understand the section better. Now, suppose if an Indian engineer assaults someone on an Indian ship near Africa, then trial can be held in Chennai with government permission. Now, there is evidence from foreign territories, that is under section 209, which was previously section 189 of CRPC. This is the last section. So here we have seen that if an offence committed outside India is being tried under 208, the central government may allow deposition or exhibit physical or electronic, made before judicial diplomatic authorities abroad to accept as evidences. Now, suppose as an Indian is tried in Mumbai for a drug offence in Thailand, then the Thai police deposition can be used in Indian courts with approvals. Then we have to see the importance of chapter 14, which talks about jurisdiction of criminal courts in inquiries and trials. The first is that it defines the territorial jurisdiction. Second, it also clarifies the multiple jurisdictional crimes. Third, it handles crime with multiple acts or consequences. You can easily understand which court will have the jurisdiction when there are multiple acts or consequences in the matter. Then there is facilitate trials for specific offences. Suppose if there are specific offences given, kidnapping, robbery, dacoity, then which court will have the jurisdiction for the matter are also specified under this chapter. Then it covers electronic communication based crime, as we have earlier seen under the previous section 202, which was previously section 182 of CRPC. So if any offence is done through emails or electronic forms, then which court will have jurisdiction is also being covered under this chapter. And then there are addresses offences during journey and war. Suppose if an offence is committed in a transit, then which court will have the jurisdiction is also specified. It lastly also handles joint and related offences. Suppose if there is a permit a single court to try multiple related offences or accused together, it avoids duplicity of trials, that it provides a flexibility to state government. It also revolves jurisdictional conflict. Then there is extraterritorial jurisdiction has been talking about under this chapter. It also acknowledged role of diplomats and foreign testimony. And lastly also ensured no offences goes untried. So we'll come to the conclusion, where you can state how this chapter plays a pivotal role in ensuring that there are smooth administration of criminal justice by clearly defining the territorial boundaries of criminal courts. It also provides comprehensive framework to determine where and how trials should be conducted. Now, by addressing various scenarios such as offences committed in multiple locations, journey, electronic means, or even outside India, it ensures that no crime escape judicial scrutiny due to technicalities in territorial jurisdiction. It also reinforced the principle of fairness, efficiency, accessibility in the Indian criminal justice system, making it a cornerstone of effective legal proceeding. So this is all we have seen in first module, starting from. So this is all about the first module. Now we'll quickly proceed towards the second point, that is explaining the provision related to initiation of inquiry proceeding under BNSS. Now we'll see the synopsis over here. Here same you can write about the introduction to BNSS and inquiry provision. Then you can talk about a definition of inquiry under section 2K of BNSS. Then there is general provision for initiation of inquiry, where you can specify the 4 section as given in your syllabus from section 210 to 214. Then lastly you will have to write in importance of chapter 15 in BNSS, which covers inquiry provisions, and then conclusion. So we can start with the introduction. So in your answers, whenever you write your introduction, you can mix it up. You can remember a para on BNSS, then on the 3 to 4 lines on BNSS, what does it does, what are the provision given under. In general, we can write about how it protects the citizens by ensuring justice. Then there are crucial provisions for initiation of inquiry proceedings and all. And then from the third line you can relate it to your topic. Suppose as in this case we are talking about inquiry proceeding. Now you can from the third line you can start it specifically talks about inquiry proceeding in case of criminal offences. Also to write the introduction, remember the chapters also. Suppose if it is inquiring proceeding, you can remember the chapter name, and you can have a line on the point that inquiry proceeding comes under chapter 15, which comprises from section 210 to 214. And at the last 4 to 5 lines you can talks about the importance of this provision. In general, you can write that it promote transparency, accountability, natural justice, ensuring the rights of both the complainant and the respondent. So if you cannot specifically remember the importance, then you can write it general also, but relatable to the topic. Then you can conclude with the last line that the initiation of inquiry proceeding under BNSS ensure investigations are done clearly, and that whatever offences carried out are legally been dealt in a sound manner to safeguard the public interest as well as legal principles. So in this way you can frame your introduction in each and every answer, whatever topic is. Just you have to remember the first line, it will be normal only, that about ensuring justice. In the third line you can relate it to the topic. If you remember the chapter name and section, you can just mention that it talks about this chapter and also what it include. In simple words you can write about that, and then the importance of the chapter, and then add together the importance of BNSS. Then comes the second topic, that is definition of inquiry under section 2k of BNSS. Now under section 2k of BNSS, the term inquiry is defined as the formal examination procedure which are conducted by the magistrate. So here we can also see that this definition encompasses how the pre-trial investigation process, where evidences is gathered, facts are established, and initial findings are made regarding the alleged offences or misconduct. Now this inquiry is a procedural step that may lead to further judicial action such as trial or other legal remedies. It is also a crucial stage in the criminal justice system, as it ensures that the fact of a case are properly examined before any formal trial proceedings are initiated. So this inquiry are to, whenever magistrate or the court, they themselves investigate the matter and try to handle the matter through their subordinates and all, or by themselves, then that sort of procedures are called as inquiry. Then there are general provision for initiation of inquiry. As I said before, section 15 deals with the general provision for initiation of inquiry from section 210 to 214, which ensures structured and fair process of addressing violation of public safety and criminal offences. Now we will talk about cognition of offences by magistrate under section 210, which was previously section 190 of the CRPC. This section outlines the provision under which magistrate can take cognition of the offences. It also established framework for initiation proceedings in criminal cases. This basically clarifies the different mode through which the magistrate can take action towards the offences and ensure that a structured approach is followed in criminal trials. So the first section talks about that any magistrate of the first class and second class, specifically empowered under subsection 2, can take cognition of the offences as under: firstly, if he receives a complaint of facts that constitute the offence, or if he received a police report, which may also include police report in digital mode. Third, if he receive information from any person other than a police officer or based on the magistrate's own knowledge of the offence, then in three of this condition the magistrate can take cognition of the offences. Now this subsection 1 also says that if this magistrate of first class and second class are empowered under subsection 2. So what does subsection 2 says? That the chief judicial magistrate may empower any magistrate of the first class and magistrate of the second class to take cognition of specific offences that falls within their jurisdiction. So to exercise their power under subsection 1, they must have the powered of the chief judicial magistrate under subsection 2 of this section 210. Now there is subsection 3 that says that in case where the complaint is against a public servant, then the magistrate must receive a report containing of the facts from an officer superior to the post of public servant, and also consider the public servant explanation in regard to the incident. Now there is a case law, that is State of West Bengal versus Abani Kumar Banerjee. This landmark cases where the High Court of Calcutta elaborated on the meaning and scope of expression of taking cognition. Now although the term is not explicitly defined in CRPC or the BNSS, the court held that a magistrate can be said to have taken cognition of offences when he applies his judicial mind to the fact of the case for the purpose of proceeding under the law. which emphasize that the act of taking cognition is not a mechanical or administrative function but a judicial application of mind to the material placed before the magistrate. Now we'll talk about section 211 that talks about procedure for transfer of cases, which was also previously known as section 191 of the CRPC. This talks about transfer of case to another magistrate. Now suppose when a cognizance has been taken by the magistrate under the clause C of subsection 1 of 210, that is receiving information from any person other than the police officer based on the magistrate's own knowledge of the offense, then in such kind of cases before the evidence stage the magistrate must ask the accused that whether he is willing to have the case inquired into or tried by another magistrate, and upon given the choice the accused must decide that whether he want to continue before the same magistrate or another magistrate. Now if there is multiple accused, and if any of the accused objected, then also this section will apply. Now after the objection has been taken, the chief judicial magistrate on behalf of the accused will transfer the case to the suitable other magistrate under this section. Now section 212 that talks about making over of case to magistrate. Now the chief judicial magistrate, after taking cognizance of offence, make over the case for inquiry or trial to any other competent magistrate subordinate to him. That means the chief judicial magistrate can transfer the case to any competent magistrate under their jurisdiction for inquiry or trial. Now the subsection 2 says that the magistrate of the first class can be empowered by the chief judicial magistrate to exercise the same power given to the chief judicial magistrate under subsection 1 of section 212 by any general or special order specified, and thereupon magistrate may also hold the inquiry or trial. Now section 213, which talks about cognizance by court of session, which was previously section 193 of CRPC. This says that no court of session can take cognizance of an offence as a court of original jurisdiction unless the case has been committed to it by the magistrate. Says that court of session only try cases that have been committed to it by a magistrate, that can ensure that high courts of session can only deal with serious offences committed. Then there is section 214 that talks about trial by additional session judge, correspond to section 195 of previous CRPC. So this section 214 says about the trial of cases by the additional session judge, which provides flexibility and allows the session judge of a division to delegate cases to additional session judge or as directed by the High Court. Now in this section, the additional session judge given the power to try such cases as the session judge of division may be by a general or special order given to the additional session judge by the session judge or by the High Court. Now in previous CRPC there was also an inclusion of assistant session judge, so this position has been removed in the current BNSS. Now we have importance of chapter 15 that talks about condition requisite for initiation of proceeding. Now this talks about initiation of criminal proceeding. So here in the first section we have seen that how the magistrate can take cognizance, upon whose complaint the magistrate is allowed to take the cognizance of the offences and try the cases. Then we have ensuring fair trial and natural justice. As we have seen in section 211, the accused are given power to transfer the case to another magistrate. So this ensures that the accused right is also being maintained, and also the principle of natural justice can be upheld. Then there is judicial decentralization and workload distribution. Under section 212 and 214, it allows the transfer and allocation of cases among subordinate and additional session judge, which ensure the judicial efficiency and reducing pendency of the cases. Then there is role of magistrate and session court that is defined clearly in this chapter. Then we have accountability in cases including public servant, that upon an offense is committed by public servant, what can be done and what should be taken on consideration. Then there is compatibility with digital advancement. As we have seen, the section 210 also talks about digital mode of police report. So this shows how the uh, new criminal procedure is trying to cope up with the digital advancement of the modern society. Then there is a bridge between investigation and trial. This section serves as the connective mechanism between police investigation and court trials, thereby ensuring procedural completeness and adherence to the rule of law. Then there is constitutional significance. This section talks about Article 21 of Constitution, that is right to life and personal liberty, by ensuring that no person is prosecuted or tried without due process of. Then we can finally come to the conclusion, where you can talk in general from section 210 to 214, that how it is a critical phase in the criminal procedural framework that provides judicial machinery begins to take formal cognizance of alleged offences, which also lay down statutory mechanism through which complaints, police report and other forms of information are evaluated before initiating criminal proceeding. Now, by elaborating on the condition requisite for the initiation of proceeding, this ensures that the principle of natural justice, procedural fairness, and judicial efficiency are upheld. And last, we can end it up that how BNSS is trying to have progressive approach by including digital records and enhancing jurisdictional clarity, which reflects the effort to make justice delivery system more accessible, transparent, and responsive to the need of modern society. Now we'll go to the third question, that is describe in detail the exception of the general rule of moving criminal code under BNSS. Let us see first the synopsis. You can start with introduction, then general rule of initiation of criminal proceeding, then about the need for the exception or to general rule, and then the statutory exception under BNSS that start from section 215 to 222, and then the importance of the provisions, and then lastly with the conclusion. So in the introduction, you, as I've previously said, you can start how BNSS is firstly approaching to initiate criminal proceeding by filing complaint before magistrate and through police report, and how it prevents misuse of the legal processes and to protect certain public interests. Then how there are exceptions also in the matter that intended to maintain the balance between individual right and systematic safeguard. So you can write the introduction in general, starting from what does the BNSS do, then what it has also done, like it has imposed initiation of criminal proceeding, the process of initiation of criminal proceeding, and how there are exception rules that try to maintain the balance between the individual rights and systematic safeguards. Now the general rule of initiation of criminal proceeding. So the ordinary course of criminal proceeding as envisaged under BNSS begins with a complaint, FIR, or a magistrate cognizance. Now any person having knowledge of an offence may approach the criminal court or police, and the process begins without the need for a preliminary approval or sanction, which promotes access to justice and encourages timely redressal of criminal courts. Now there is a need for exception to the general rule, that despite the openness of the general rule, the law recognizes the unstrict initiation of criminal action in certain cases can lead to harassment, misuse, obstruction in the official function. Therefore, specific provision under BNSS restrict the filing of criminal cases in sensitive matters such as act done by the public servant in discharge of official duty, offence against the state, allegation involving judges or high official, matrimonial disputes, defamation, threat to witnesses. So these are some of the exceptions given under the. So the first section is 215, that is prosecution for contempt of lawful authority of public servant, for offence against public justice, and for offence relating to documents given in evidences. This section was previously under 195 of CRPC. So the section specifically lays down the exception to the general rule of moving towards criminal courts. It restricts private individual for initiating criminal proceeding in certain cases, and only authorized person or court can file complaints to prevent misuse or harassment. So the subsection 1 clause AI talks about that no court shall take cognizance of the following unless a written complaint is made by an authorized public servant. So offences under section 204 to 224 except 207 of BNS, including offences like destroying evidences, giving false information, then resisting lawful authority, etc. Now, point number 2, abetment or abetment to commit such offences. Point number 3, criminal conspiracy to commit the above. In this kind of offences, the court cannot take cognizance on private complaint unless there is a written complaint made by the authorized public servant. So, who can file a complaint under this provisions? Concerned public servant to whom he is administratively subordinate, or any other authorized public servant. Now, clause B says that no court shall take cognizance of the following unless a written complaint is made by the concerned court itself or its authorized officer. So, the offences are offence under section 227 to 231, 234, 235, 242, 246, 265, which relates to offence committed in court proceeding like perjury, obstruction of justice. Second is offence in respect of documents produced in court from section 334, 337, 340, 341, which includes the fabricating evidences, using forged document. Third is abetment or criminal conspiracy to commit any of the above offences. So in this sort of cases, the court cannot take cognizance unless there is a written complaint filed by the concerned court where the offence has been taken place, or any authorized officer of the court. So who can file the complaint over here? The court in which the offence is committed, or any authorized officer of the court, or another court to which the original court is subordinate to. Now we'll see the subsection 2 that includes 3 points. That firstly, that the public servant or the authority who authorized the complaint can withdraw it as well. However, withdrawal will not be allowed if the trial is already concluded. Third, a copy of the withdrawal order must be sent to the court. Subsection 3, it defines the term court, which has been repeatedly used in this section. So this will include civil court, revenue court, criminal court, tribunals. Now subsection 4, which talks about explain which court is considered subordinate for filing the complaint. As we have seen that there is a mention that the subordinate court will also can have the right to file the written complaint. So we'll see what will be considered as subordinate. Now, if the appeal lie to move more than one court, then the court with lower jurisdiction will be the subordinate court. And if the appeal lie to both civil and revenue courts, then it depends on the nature of the case, which will be the subordinate court over here. So now we'll proceed to section 216 that talks about procedure for witness in case of threatening, etc., which was previously section 195 of CRPC. So this section basically deals with the witnesses, that any person may file a complaint in relation to an offence under section 232 of the BNS, which relates to threatening of witness. So it provides that the witness or any other person may file a complaint in relation to the offence. Like if the witnesses are being threatened, then under this section, the witnesses or any other person knowing the witness has the right to file a complaint in the case for the court to take cognizance in the matter. Now we'll talk about section 217, which is prosecution of offence against state and of criminal conspiracy to commit such offence, which is also previously known as section 196 of CRPC. This outlines the procedure and condition under which a court may not take cognizance of offence related to crime against the state and criminal conspiracy associated with such offences. So the subsection 1 says that no court shall take cognizance of firstly any offence punishable under chapter 7 of BNS, that is related to crime against the state, then offences under section 196, section 299 or 353(1) of BNS. Now here criminal conspiracy and abetment is said that criminal conspiracy to commit the above mentioned offence. Second, any abetment described under section 47 of BNS. Now there is also sanction requirement. So these offences can only be prosecuted under the previous sanction of the central government or the state government. So this is an exception. subsection 2, which says that no court shall take cognizance of offence under section 197 or section 353 2 or 3 of BNS and criminal conspiracy to commit such offences except the previous sanction of central government, state government or the district magistrate is there. Subsection 3 says that no court shall take cognizance of the offences of any criminal conspiracy punishable under subsection 2 of section 61 of BNS other than a criminal conspiracy to commit an offence punishable with death, imprisonment for life or rigorous punishment for the term of 2 years or upward unless the state government or the district magistrate has consented in writing to the initiation of the proceeding, provided that where the criminal conspiracy is one to which the provision of section 215 apply, no such consent shall be necessary. Now subsection 4, it is preliminary investigation. Now before granting any sanction under subsection 1 or 2 or consent under subsection 3, the central government, state government or the district magistrate may order a preliminary investigation by a police officer. This investigation must be at least of inspector rank and that the officer will have the power to provide under section 174(3) for conducting the investigation. Now section 218, prosecution of judge and public servant, which was previously section 197 of CRPC. The first subsection is protection of judge and public servant. Now here who are covered? The first is judge, magistrate, and the third is public servant who cannot be removed from office without government sanction. Now the condition is that the offence must be allegedly committed while acting or purporting to act in the discharge of official duties. Now the requirement is that the previous sanction is required before prosecuting except when government by the Lokpal or Lok Ayukta Act 2013. Now sanctioning authorities are central government, state government. Now central government if the person was working with the union government at the time of the offence, state government if the person was working with the state. Now there is a proviso which says about the emergency rule that under article 356, if the alleged offence was committed during President's rule when article 356 was in force, then the central government shall be considered the sanctioning authority instead of the state government. Now time bound decision is there. The concerned government must decide within 120 days of receiving the request for sanction. If no decision is made under 120 days, then the sanction is deemed to be granted. Now the exception is when no sanction is needed. If the public servant is accused under the following specific sections of BNS, then no sanction is required. That is section 64 to 71, that is offences like sexual offences, trafficking, etc. Section 74 to 79, that is crime against women, children, such as sexual harassment and voyeurism. Then section 143, organized crime or terrorism related. Section 199 and 200, that is crime involving fake evidences or false complaint. Now subsection 2, which talks about protection for armed force personnel. Now no court shall take cognizance of any offences committed by the member of the armed force of the union while acting or purporting to act in discharge of the official duty except with the previous sanction of the central government. Now the subsection 3 says that the extension to public order force, that the state government has the right to issue a notification to extend the same protection as given to armed force in subsection 2 to any class of forces maintaining public order like state police or parliamentary. In such cases, state government replace central government as the sanctioning authority. Now subsection 4 says about exception during emergency. Article 356, if it is in force, then maintaining public order when the state is under president rule, only the central government can grant the sanction for prosecution. Subsection 5, there is authority to decide prosecution details. The center or the state government can appoint the person who will prosecute the judge or public servant, decide the manner of prosecution, specify the offences to be prosecuted, specify the court where the trial will be decided. Then there is section 219, which was previously 198 of CRPC, that is prosecution of offences against marriage. This section outlines the procedure and condition under which court can take cognizance of offences relating to marriage as defined under section 81 to 84 of BNS. Subsection 1 says that cognizance only on complaint by aggrieved person. Court can only take cognizance of offence under section 81 to 84 of BNS if the complaint is made by the aggrieved person over here. No third person complaint will lead to the cognition of the court. Subsection 1 that has a proviso. Now the complaint on behalf of certain person, if the aggrieved person is a child of unsound mind, has intellectual disability requiring higher support needs, unable to complain due to sickness or infirmity, a woman who due to local custom should not be compelled to appear in public, which are also called as Pardanishi women, then another person may make a complaint on their behalf with the leave of the court. So this is the only exception given. Now subsection 2, that only husband is deemed aggrieved under section 84 for offences under section 84 BNS. Only the husband of the woman shall be considered the aggrieved person. Now subsection 3 that talks about notice to legal guardian. Now if complaint under proviso A is filed by someone who is not the legal guardian and the court knows of a guardian legally appointed, then the court must notify the guardian and give them an opportunity to be heard before granting the leave. 4 is about the condition for authorization under proviso B. Now authorization for someone to complain on behalf of a husband must be in writing, be signed or attested by the husband, contain a statement confirming the husband is aware of the allegation, be countersigned by the commanding officer, be accompanied by a certificate stating leave cannot be granted at that time. Subsection 5, presumption of genuineness. Any document appearing to comply with subsection 4 is presumed to be genuine and unless proved otherwise and must be accepted as evidences. Subsection 6, limitation for offence under section 64 BNS, that court shall not take cognizance of section 64 of BNS sexual intercourse with own wife under 18 years if more than 1 year has passed since the offence. Now subsection 7, applicability to abatement or attempt. Now this section applies equally to abatement of offence or attempt to commit such offence. Now section 220 of BNSS, that is prosecution of offence under section 85 of BNS, which was previously section 198A of CRPC. This section outlines the condition under which a court can take cognizance of offence relating to dowry. Now this outlines that no court shall take cognizance of an offence under section 85 of BNS except on a police report of fact constituting the offences, on a complaint made by the aggrieved woman, her father, mother, brother, sister, or her father's or mother's brother or sister or any other relative by blood, marriage or adoption with the court's permission. Now section 221, cognition of offence under 67 of BNS, which was previously section 198B of CRPC, which outlines the specific requirement of taking cognizance of offence of cruelty by husband towards his wife, that is section 67 BNS. Now no court shall take cognizance of the offence under section 67 of BNS where the persons are married unless the wife files a complaint or the court is prima facie satisfied the fact constituting the offence. Section 222, which talks about prosecution for defamation under section 356 BNS, which was previously section 199 of CRPC, which outlines how and when a complaint for defamation can be filed under section 356 of BNS. Now the general rule is that court shall not take cognizance of defamation under section 356 BNS except on a complaint by the aggrieved person. Now there are proviso that if the person is a child, a person of unsound mind or intellectual disability, too sick or infirm or a Pardanishi lady, then someone else may complain on their behalf with the court's leave. Now the special rule for the high public official is that if the defamed person is the president, vice president, governor, union or state minister, UT administrator or a public servant in charge of official duties, court of session may take the cognizance directly and there is no commitment needed based on a written complaint by the public prosecutor. Now subsection 3, which is requirement of complaint by public prosecutor, must set forth facts, nature and other particulars to reasonably inform the accused. Now subsection 4, it is sanction requirement for public prosecutor complaint. It must get prior sanction from the state government if the person is a state governor, state minister or state public servant from central government if other cases. And fifth is a time limit. The complaint must be made within 6 months from the date of the alleged offence. Sixth is personal right not affected. The aggrieved still retains the right to file a personal complaint before a magistrate. Also preserve the magistrate's power to take cognizance. Now, the importance of this section is that it protects the personal and marital rights, the prevention of misuse and frivolous litigation, recognition of a special circumstances that the law accounts for minor individuals with mental disabilities, a woman unable to appear in public, making access to justice for more inclusive by letting the third party to make the complaint with the court leave. Then there is special protection for public official, prevention of judicial time, balancing individual dignity and public duty. And lastly, the conclusion, where you can state about that how carefully this structure has been framed for initiating criminal proceeding in sensitive and personal matters, and how it emphasizes the principle that not all wrong requires automatic prosecution, but rather consideration action by the affected party or the close kin subject to the court direction can be done, and how it recognizes special circumstances introducing procedural safeguard preserving the sanctity of public offences. Provision reflect a modern sensitive balanced approach to criminal justice, and how this has helped to uphold both individual autonomy and institutional integrity, ensuring that justice is both accessible and reasonable. This is all about the first four topics. Now in the second video I'll be discussing the rest two, that is complaint to magistrate and inquiry proceeding before magistrate, which is from section 223 to section 232 of BNSS. So till then, please like, share and subscribe Timeless Trials so that you don't miss any updates from our channel. And also let us know in the comment section that what else topic that you need us to make a notes on to help you through your exams. Thank you.